Hello. So we're going to continue our conversation about Longpoint, and our topic of conversation for this video is going to be the classes and the lectures. We can talk through what classes we did take and what we got out of it and what we thought of the instructors. We did take one class together. And then we did end up splitting off and taking some other separate classes. And we got really over-ambitious. We're like, we're going to take every class we can.
We thought we were going to take a lot of classes because we weren't competing in the tournaments.
Yeah.
Turns out the classes are every bit as exhausting as the tournaments. And trying to do multiple hours of them back-to-back isn't really...
Yeah, you realize how bad of an idea that is. I'm still a little bit sore, my arms from it. But we did take one class together, and that was the cutting forms class. And this was basically combination cutting. It was using Myers cut drills. It was an incredibly good class, very tiring. But we went through really some basics of cutting. There's nothing really complicated. It was simple Oberhaus and Unterhaus, and it was doing it either with the long edge, the short edge, or what I think he called it like the reduced edge or something, where you basically pull the cut a bit in order to make the second cut. But this was an interesting class because I think it worked well whether you were a beginner, intermediate, or an advanced person, because you could always get better. And this was about having the proper form in doing the cuts as well. And I know that, so I was going into it. I would not say that I'm an advanced hemo practitioner. I would say at best I am kind of high intermediate, because I know the reality of the people that are out there that are really good at this stuff. And you're relatively new to it.
I am complete rookie.
And so we both are going to have very, very different experiences. But what'd you think of that class, just kind of overall?
I thought it was really cool. I thought it was really interesting. I think that it would have been nicer if the teacher had some assistants helping, because he was going around and correcting everybody individually, and I feel like there were just maybe more students than one teacher could really handle, because I know at one point I got very confused about what we were doing, and I just kind of ended up having to stop and wait. And once he got to me, he re-explained it and everything was great, but I know that there was a period of time where everyone else was doing things and I kind of wasn't, because I didn't know what was going on. But I also think I'm probably the only person who got that lost.
So that was the combination cutting class. Another class that I took, I really was looking forward to it. It was a class that Matt Easton was teaching, and it was the Hutton Saber fighting. So I don't know a lot about saber fighting. The closest I'm getting to that right now is I'm beginning to do some of the basic research in Polish saber fighting, which is not at all the same as Hutton. Very different. In fact, it was a little bit regrettable because I just bought that morning. I just bought a synthetic saber based on a Polish saber, and doesn't work so well for the Hutton stuff because of the large curve in the blade when you begin talking about thrust and all that. And so I took that class. That was just me. Matt Easton is an incredibly good teacher. The way he structures his class, I made some notes for myself on how to structure a class, because he was very adept at taking everyone who is essentially a novice to the subject. All of us have experience in the general hemo world, but it doesn't always translate to the new source. And he was able to very quickly build on the process. He's like, here's the proper footwork. Do these couple lunges. Prep this. Okay, here's how you hold the sword. Do this couple of things. Okay, here's a couple of cuts. And before you knew it, you were getting into some of the more complex drills. And this isn't like, suddenly I'm a master at it, but it was, I had the framework that I needed to, if I wanted to go pursue that, I could totally do so. Not with a Polish saber, though. That curved blade just did not work for it. But it was a really, really fun class, and very tiring, because I took that directly after we did the combination cutting class, and so my arm was already a little bit tired after, essentially it was an hour and a half classes, hour and a half of doing cuts, and then I needed to hold my arm out and up with a saber guard. My shoulder was extremely tired by the end of that kind of 3-hour period, but it was really good. I really enjoyed that class. Past that class, I didn't actually participate in any of them. I kind of just observed a couple that I wanted to jump back and forth between, because the unfortunate reality was some of these classes are double booked, so you can't do both. You can't do one or the other. And I observed while you were doing the introduction to longsword, which was very oddly placed as like the very last activity.
The last thing that happens ever is the beginner class to the longsword.
Put that at the beginning of the whole thing, but it was, you know, it was actually placed there, and I'll tell you the reason it's placed there because Longpoint is also this kind of open thing, especially during the finals. A lot more people than are normally registered come in and observe this, and then suddenly you've got a lot of people who have a very big interest in what they actually just saw, so they come and try to learn. Really cool stuff. But while you're taking the class, I'll let you talk about that class in a moment, but while you're taking that class, I observed the actual cutting class, which is where they people had to pay for this one because they had to source tatami mats, which are incredibly hard to find right now, and they taught people how to do good, solid cuts. And I think I actually learned a ton from that. Mostly because since I've just recently picked up actually cutting on tatami mats, it's a lot harder than you'd think, and sometimes it's not, and it's kind of hard to determine why, but then I learned what the proper form really should be, and a good way of cutting, and kind of the competition style of cutting as well. So I actually am going to try to apply a lot of that.
Well, I know you and
very
I
much so in the
also,
future.
you and I also just simply watching them learned a bit more about how to handle the mat itself.
Yeah,
not even just the cutting part, but just
placing,
how you place it,
spiking the mat,
what sort of a stand you put it on,
learning
how
that.
you soak them. We definitely learned a lot more about that too. Just simply
cinder
watching
blocks.
Others.
Cinder blocks, good way to keep the mats under the water.
Yes.
And so yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot that we learned just through simple observation. I also did observe the other class that Matt Easton was teaching, which had to do with, I don't remember what the name of the class was off the top of my head, but it had to do with fighting an uncultured opponent, and what that actually meant in the sources was, you know, here you are as an Englishman with your saber, and you're going out and you're colonizing the world, and suddenly this person from this country is just going to attack you with a club or attack you with their own version of a sword, and they don't have all the fencing skills you have. But as anyone who's ever done these kind of martial arts or done HEMA for any long period of time knows, someone wildly swinging stuff around can still really hurt you, and can still win against even a good seasoned master if they're lucky. And so this was kind of how to defend yourself against that, how to do the proper responses of those things. And it was very interesting to watch. I missed out on the first half of that class. I was watching kind of the more advanced topics in it, but it was really, really very, very fascinating. It makes me kind of want to get into the more modern saber fighting, but I kind of we got so much other stuff we got to do in the HEMA world first. But yeah, the cutting class and Matt Easton's class were kind of back to back, so I watched those while you were doing the introduction to longsword class. And so how did that go?
So it really was a complete beginner's class. So they actually didn't cover anything that I hadn't learned already, but it was still very interesting to hear it from someone new. Bill Frisbee was the guy who was teaching this. And I mentioned that I thought there should have been more than one teacher in the combination cutting class. So Bill Frisbee actually had two assistants with him. That's what they were doing, was they were going around watching people and correcting them. And that was why I felt that was a lot more effective, to have someone just stand there and watch you. Because, you know, I've done footwork with you for, most of a year now? And just having him standing there watching me, he pointed out something that I've been doing wrong all along, that you told me you knew I did it wrong, but I didn't know I was doing it wrong. So it was still really helpful to do. But it's interesting that you mention how to fight against someone who is uncultured, because he actually covered that a little bit at the very end of the class. When we came to the end, as everyone was leaving, he was trying to talk to people and encouraging them to go and find their own local clubs and to keep pursuing it. He pointed out too, there was a gentleman sitting off to the sidelines, just kind of in the room with us, and said, you know, that guy was in this class last year, and we had watched that guy advance through the rookie tournament, and he placed quite highly in it. And he pointed out that guy and said, look, that's what he did this year. You can accomplish this in only just 1 year. Which is really inspiring to me, because I want to compete in it next year. But he also at the very end actually said, now look, what does this mean for you every day when you're walking down the street? You know, you're not going to have a sword in your hand. Someone's not going to come out of nowhere and attack you with a sword. What do you do? And he kind of gave some examples of how everyday objects can be used, how you can pick up a sword-like object, an SLO, and use that if, you know, you had a home invasion, or something happened. It was actually pretty interesting. It was a very brief little bit just there at the end, but it was pretty interesting application to everyday life too.
I think you'll generally know most people in HEMA will of course say, this is a martial art, but it's not a martial art that's meant necessarily for self-defense in the real world today.
Yeah.
That's what guns are for. But it doesn't mean that you can't learn good, proper ways of fighting, and certainly that's the point. So yeah, I kind of regret that we didn't get to see more classes. There were some really, really cool ones. A lot that were being taught on rapier stuff, and I'm not a rapier fighter. I didn't have the gear for it, so I wasn't able to participate. Really interesting stuff there. There was a sword and buckler course, and that was poorly timed.
That is what I really want to learn, is sword and buckler.
Yeah, I actually picked up this DVD, which we are going to be doing sword and buckler soon-ish, I hope. Once we kind of finish the dagger fighting stuff. But sword and buckler is kind of one of the next things we want to do. And I was like, well, we could visit that class, but we don't have the gear for it, and it's probably going to be advanced anyway.
And it was an advanced class, and we haven't even started, so.
So, we kind of skipped that one. I think it was actually conflicting with some of the other
I think it was also right after your Saber class, too.
Yeah.
So we were just like,
so yeah,
we're going to go grab lunch instead.
But the classes were really quite incredible. Every instructor that we interacted with were incredibly patient, but also incredibly nice. And kind of going back to what we talked about the people, they were there to be teachers, to be instructors, and they did a very good job of it. So Longpoint from a class perspective was really cool. Well, until next time, have a good day.